Hey everyone, Cody here. And today I want to talk about NovelCrafter and what a great tool NovelCrafter is for fiction writers. So there's a couple of parts to NovelCrafter. First is kind of the codex. Second is the actual writing part. And so I'm going to talk about both and why I think it's a great tool for fiction writers, regardless of whether you're using it for like the AI writing or if you're just using it as kind of a place to store everything. So I'll talk real quick about my background. So personally, like right now, I'm working on a dark action fantasy novel, and right now I am currently over 225,000 words, so almost 250,000 words just for this one book. Now, I might actually break it into multiple books, but I decided I wanted to write all of the content for the character story first, and then kind of go back and see if I want to divvy it up or make one story. But anyway, in the past, I have written a couple of novels that I didn't really publish because they weren't that great. But over the years, I just wanted to, have something that I wrote. And so I wrote at least 3 full novels. I've written multiple short stories and sections of stories. So now I've just kind of like, I want to make my magnum opus, if you will. And this thing will probably be over 300K for sure, maybe closer to 400 by the time it's done. Now, all of that to say, this thing is a massive project. It's the biggest project I've ever undertaken. And NovelCrafter has been an amazing tool for this project. Now, let me kind of back up. In the past, before like AI was really a thing, and before a lot of these writing tools were even widely available, I used to have to kind of keep all my notes in like Evernote or OneNote. Sometimes I would keep them in other things like Google Docs or something, but it would just kind of get everywhere. And I know there was other tools before, but I just wasn't really keen on a lot of them. So I would just kind of keep all of my stuff in OneNote because I was already paying for Microsoft Office. And so I just kind of have multiple OneNote, little notebooks to keep all my ideas in. The problem with that is that you have to keep going back and referencing all of that stuff. And every time you create a new character or a new location, a new town or village or whatever, you come up with a new character, you come up with a new piece of lore. You have to kind of keep all of that in your mind as you're going back, or you have to keep going back and referencing it, every time you make notes. And that is a lot of work. And also sometimes, I'm going to be honest, I would just get lazy and not look and just try to go off my memory and I would write it. And I'm pretty sure there were times where there was inconsistencies in the writing and the story and stuff like that because I wasn't going back to actually check what I had because it was just so much work, right? Sure you could like search it and all that, but anyway, coming to now, I've been using NovelCrafter for about 5 months. I think it was July, and it is currently the end of November, so 4 to 5 months. And it has been awesome because the first part of NovelCrafter, the codex entries, is awesome. So with NovelCrafter, you get this thing called the codex, and it's basically where you can put all of your ideas into one place. You can put all your your characters, your locations, the lore, objects, items, subplots, and then they even have like an other section. But you can basically put all that stuff in there, and having that organized for me has been a game changer. I have ADHD, I'm pretty sure. I've never been diagnosed, but like I cannot stick with anything for a very long time. In fact, doing this project right now with over 200,000 words has been a struggle, but I want to prove it to myself that I can do it. Anyway, but having everything in the codex entries, so, having the ability to create multiple, character codex entries that has all of the descriptions of, maybe their backstory, maybe, a little bit of their physical description, maybe some snippets of information about them. Having all that stuff there is just super, super useful because if you're not writing everything by hand and you do use AI, it will pull all that information for you. But even if you write everything by hand, you have the codex. So you literally just go and click on it and it gives you all that information. So it keeps everything organized. And I love it so, so much because one other thing that I kind of wouldn't really think of is I am a pantser. I hardly ever outline. I might have a rough idea of where a story is going to go, but I do struggle with, not outlining enough. And so one thing that I'll do is I'll just write a whole scene because it'll come to me, and then I'll forget all of the details, and I won't have them in like a codex entry, or in the past, I wouldn't even write any of that stuff down. I just write it, and I wouldn't match it up to anything to make sure that let's say I had described the outside one way, but then got to the inside and described it another way. But if you thought about it, they didn't really match up. I wouldn't really go back and look at that, and maybe nobody would notice. But with the ability to do this, I can actually have both of those codex entries as separate entries, and then go back and kind of look like, oh, okay, this is the outside, this is the inside. Okay, this makes sense for the way that this is structured, right? So it actually keeps everything in one place, and I cannot say this enough. It has been so helpful for me to have the codex feature, because having everything from the locations to the people to the objects has been a game changer. Because every time I come up with a new idea, I can just plug it into, the object or the location or whatever. I can just add that to that entry, and then it's there for good. So I love it so much. So even if you don't use the AI writing portion of NovelCrafter, still the codex has been very helpful for me to be able to have all of the pieces of the story in one place. Now, before I still even get to the AI writing, also having the breakdown of, the different acts and the chapters, and then having a little description of, each like section, each scene, also very helpful, because then because there are free AIs that you could use right now that you could just use to summarize your scene. So you could write out a scene, and then there's like a little summary box. I guess, oh, it would be over here if you're looking at it, but for me, it's on the right. So on the right side, there's like a little summary box of the scene. And there are free AIs you can use, even in NovelCrafter, if you hook it up to OpenRouter, that can summarize it for you, and it doesn't cost any credits, and it gives you like a little snippet of what the scene is about. And having that little reminder is very helpful, because if I kind of like, let's be honest, if you walk away from a project for a while, you kind of lose the fire of it. You lose track, you lose that momentum. And sometimes it's hard to get back into the groove. That's currently where I'm at, to be honest. But going back and just kind of reading some of the summaries has been super helpful, because then I don't have to sit there and skim all of the stuff that I wrote over the last few scenes. I can just kind of read the summaries and be like, oh, that's right, that's where I was, and then start writing. Now, sometimes I'll read the full thing, but having the summaries is super helpful, especially if you're looking kind of like at the outline or the grid, because if you're looking at the grid, it shows you all the summaries, so you can kind of see actually how far you've progressed in a chapter. It also tells you the word count for each like section. Well, it tells you for each scene, but it also tells you for each chapter. That is immensely helpful, because then I can kind of know how much I've written in one section, and maybe I need to break the book in at this point instead of this point, or whatever. So again, before you even get to the AI stuff, it is very useful, and I really do like NovelCrafter a lot, if you can't tell. And if you're wondering why I'm recording this in my car and not at my computer to show everyone the features, I have a lot of kids, and they are home right now, and yeah, they're making a lot of noise. So I thought I'd come out here and just kind of share my experience with it. Now, let's get to the AI portion. So if you do want to use NovelCrafter to write your book, again, game changer, not even kidding. So I would not have been able to write, well, I guess technically I would have been able to write this much, the 220 plus thousand words. I could have done it by hand. Okay, let's say I could have, if I just, put in a concerted effort. But I have a full-time job, and I have, like I said, a lot of kids. I have a wife. I have responsibilities outside of the home. I'm a big part of my church. So there's a lot of things there. So I just don't have a lot of time, and I'm not making excuses. You have time for the things you make time for. And this is not to get into all my personal stuff. My point is that I just don't have a lot of time to write the story that is plaguing me. If you have written anything, and especially fiction, sometimes it just weighs on you so heavily that you can't not write it. And so you want to write it, but then you start writing it, and it's such a heavy burden. And I'm not saying writing is not always fun, or it is always fun, but sometimes it's just like you have the idea in your head and it won't leave you alone. So you have to write it to get it out of your head. But then if you don't finish it, then you feel like, well, now I failed because I didn't finish that thing. So that's where I'm at. So anyway, having the AI writing assistant, huge, because I'm not having the AI just simply write the entire book. Okay, I want people to know that I am putting in a huge amount of effort to writing out the entire scenes and the dialogue. I really like writing dialogue, and I'm pretty decent at it. It seems, very natural, but it conveys a lot of information. Um, but anyway, enough about me. My point is that it is very beneficial to be able to have AI write the gaps. Okay, so one thing that I noticed about myself is that I might be good at dialogue, but I don't always describe everything well, or I don't describe kind of the in-between stuff of like maybe minor actions between characters, or I don't describe a lot of like reactions from characters, or you know what I mean? So like there's always gaps that one author might tend to lean towards this thing, but then kind of skimp on another thing. None of us are perfect and we all have our strengths and weaknesses. But having AI kind of help write in some of the gaps, especially with the codex entries, game changer. Because here's the thing, I can come up with all of these, like the way that like this place looks, right? Maybe they come to a place and, they have to describe how that place looks. So I don't have it in my own words. Maybe I'm just struggling with it. And it's not a huge important part of the story. I just need the characters to get past that point. Then I will just use NovelCrafter to write that section. So I'll just say, and then they went to this place, and then in parentheses describe this place, and then the AI will write it. And there's tons of models to choose from for the AI. So, there's lots of different models to use. And like I said, there's even free models that you can use that don't even cost anything to use. You just have to set up OpenAI or OpenRouter, probably a few bucks, I think, to set it up. But then there's models within OpenRouter that actually don't cost anything. Now, I like to experiment. I tend to use Claude 3.5 Sonnet, but there are a few others that I've used. But anyway, my point is having that just as a resource. So even if I'm writing most of the book, having the AI kind of fill in some of the gaps, or, even the mediocre middle sentences to kind of transition from one idea to another. Sometimes I struggle with that. Or sometimes I have an idea and I just don't know the words to put it on. And having the AI write just that section helps me kind of bridge to the next section. And then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I can get to this. Let me give you an example, a concrete example of where I currently am and why I'm even making this video, because I am using AI to help write it. I'm not going to pretend like I'm not, right? But it's not doing all of the writing. I'm not just clicking, here's what I want to happen in the story, and then it writes it. I'm having it fill in the gaps. So let me give you an example. I have two characters and they are going from this place to this other place, right? Classic story. But the place that they're at, I was fine writing. And the place that they're going to, I'm excited to write. That place in between, not so much. Not really much happening. Now, I am trying to shorten that down. I'm not trying to lengthen it if there's nothing there. However, I just don't know what to write, right? And so I just kind of had the AI come up with the description of that short trek from this place to this place, because I really had nothing to write. And sure, I could just be like, oh, they were here and then they were here, but there's no progression, right? So I just needed a short transitionary kind of section to go from here to here, and it helped me out. So AI, I think people demonize AI and they say like, oh, all AI is bad. You should not use any AI. And you know what? I agree on the surface that sounds good. At the same time, it is here and it is a tool. And I think if we use it responsibly and we use it in conjunction with what we're already doing, I don't see that as a terrible thing, right? It's kind of the world we're going to be living in the next few years, like it or not. So I'm not advocating for or against. I'm just saying it can be useful. And I have found it very useful within NovelCrafter. So ultimately, that's all I've got. This wasn't even like a pitch. I'm not even trying to sell people on NovelCrafter. I'm not an affiliate. Maybe they'll approve me for the affiliate program. I think I applied, but they never got back to me. So I'm not even, as of this video, I'm not even, an affiliate. However, if there is a link below it, it may be an affiliate link. I don't know. I don't really care if somebody gets it or not. Like if they do, great. If they don't, whatever. I just really like the service, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. So ultimately, that is it. Yeah, don't really have anything else for you. But I just thought I would share that because I am a huge fan of NovelCrafter and I like it a lot. And yeah, that's pretty much it. See you.